Hello, Scrufftards. Welcome back to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And Sweden has provided Ukraine with another substantial aid package, military assistance, and that will remind Russia that Swedish steel still cuts deep. So, what is in the aid package? Well, first off, there will be some Robot 70, as it says. That's a man pad featured in the image. It's a very effective anti-air missile system. Robot is the Swedish term for a missile. It is a ballistic weapon that is slaved somehow to the controller. Hence, it's a robot because robot means slave. There you go. That's why. So, dog. Anyway, so yeah, Robot 70, Missile 70. It's a thing slaved to a thing and goes after the enemy. Anyway, so this is anti-air, highly effective. It is a laser riding missile. Therefore, it makes it very difficult for aircraft to jam this missile, since usually how you avoid a laser riding missile when on the ground and stuff like that is you pop smoke, right? Because then the laser hits the smoke and you can no longer guide it towards the target. And you can't really drop smoke in the air. So very effective. And Ukraine has used the RBS 70, Robot System 70, very effectively to take out Russian gunships, attack helicopters. A long rant about this goddamn missile, but it's important, it works, it's very effective, and it kicks ass. What else? It says here granatkastare, grenade thrower in Swedish, translated to English as mortar. So yeah, you chuck grenades with a mortar, essentially. And I'm not sure if it's 120 mil or smaller, but that's what's being given. But now this is, if you're in the Swedish military, if you're in any Swedish military, this is the big thing, the big boy, granatgevär, GRG as we call it in Sweden, or as the Norwegians say, RFK, recoil-free cannon. The Carl Gustav shoulder launched rocket, or rocket, it's not a rocket, it's a rifle system that is very versatile. You can take out armor with it, you can take out bunkers, you can fire airburst rounds to deal with troops hiding behind cover or in trenches. It even has flechette rounds that turns the goddamn thing into a giant shotgun, right? It's a shotgun that you fire from the shoulder. Oh my God. So it's incredible. It's an amazing weapon system. Taken into service in 1948 initially, and as time has gone on, it has become more modern materials used to make it lighter, shorter. I think it only weighs 6 or 7 kilos at this point without ammunition in it. That's insane. That it basically weighs the same as a large rifle. It is a rifle at this point, right? Incredible. Anyway, so yes, military nerds and professional soldiers all alike, they love this thing. And if you fire it and don't have a nosebleed afterwards, you're doing it wrong. And I will die on that hill. You need to have a nosebleed when you fire this thing. Uh, anyway, moving on, Pansarskott, P-skott. That is the AT4. That is the international name for AT4, for Pansarskott, P-skott, AT4. Swedish weapon. It is a one-time use Carl Gustav, essentially. Instead of having this big, heavy, reloadable system, They took the heat round available for Carl Gustaf, put it in a disposable tube, made it into a rocket instead of a rifle, essentially, and made it into a one-time disposable launch system, right? So AT4 is essentially the little brother of Carl Gustaf. It also says anti-tank mines, gas masks, and CBRN equipment, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, whatever it's called, winter equipment, and helmets. So lots of good stuff in there. But the two big things, Robot 70 and GRG, the Carl Gustaf. And this is interesting. We're moving on to the sea now. Sweden will provide Ukraine with 6 combat boat 90, including carriages, so you can drive them across land and then put them into the water. It could be essential, you never know, right? You need to move them from land somehow, or from Sweden someone down to Ukraine and then put them in the ocean. And some other monetary aids as well, dealing with maritime operations. It also says export credit guarantees for the rebuilding of Ukraine, whatever that means. But combat boat 90, 6 of them. This is interesting because Sweden has already given Ukraine 10 of these combat boat 90. So now we're up to 16. And these boats, these are not just your average fast-going troop transports. These are armored, and they are designed to, and they have a very shallow draft, so they can actually drive straight up to a beach and allow 18 Marines to jump out the front of the vessel onto a shoreline, onto an island, onto rocks, and conduct amphibious assaults. And I've been keeping my eye on this the entire year, so I'll highlight what I'm talking about. And yes, Operation Käftsmäll is still on the table. What is Operation Käftsmäll? It is. I've been speculating the entire year that Ukraine intends to launch an amphibious assault at Kherson across the Dnipro. And I thought initially that would be Ukraine's big counter move. It ended up being Kursk instead. Took me and everyone else by complete surprise. But I realized early on that Ukraine would do something this year because they were constantly being pushed back. They were on the back foot. Russia was aggressive and controlled the initiative, and that is when an army, will try and turn things around, turn the tables, and regain initiative. So I kind of realized that, something's going to happen this summer. And then we started to get news that Ukraine were receiving all of these boats, assault crafts, and high-speed transports. So I figured, they're going for Kherson and the Dnipro, and I called it Operation Käftsmäll. So I've been keeping my eye on this, and as you can see here, we have 6 nations primarily that have been providing Ukraine with lots and lots of boats. And at this point, we are now up to 179 confirmed craft boats of various types. And of those, 22 are the Swedish combat boat 90. And the combat boat 90 is a armored, fast-moving, heavily armed assault boat. Packing heavy firepower, it carries 50 cal machine guns, miniguns, missiles, grenade launchers, and what have you. And it's intended to suppress an enemy on an island, drive up to the island, and allow the Marines to jump out the front and take control of the beach, of the island, or whatever. And they have 22 of those. And they also have similar vessels provided by Finland, the USCO. We know that Finland has provided a minimum of 5 USCO assault craft. So it's a very potent amphibious force that Ukraine has managed to build up during this year so far. And I just want to highlight also that these boats, the 179 confirmed boats and craft, they do not include the boats that we know the United States and Australia has provided, right? So we are looking at well beyond 200 fast, high-speed transports and heavy assault craft. So Ukraine, and now it's really interesting because now Sweden provides Ukraine with 6 more combat boat 90, right? So they keep building this amphibious force, and I mean you wouldn't do that unless you actually planned on doing something major down on the ocean or in and around the river of Dnipro. So maybe not this year with Kursk going on. Maybe it will happen. Maybe they try to move troops into Kursk and then they will launch Operation Käftsmäll. Who knows? But this thing is still in the works. It's still gonna happen. Maybe not this year, but definitely in 2025. We'll see what happens, but make no mistake about it. Operation Käftsmäll, it's coming. And this maybe the most important news. People have been focusing on the last bit that we'll get to, but this is pretty big from the Swedish point of view, at least. Sweden intends to go from donation to ensuring Ukrainian production of spare parts for the CV90s and other Swedish vehicles. So Sweden wants to set up production in Ukraine and allow Ukraine to handle their own production needs to support the Swedish vehicles in their service. And we're talking about combat vehicle 90, STRV 122, the main battle tank, Archer artillery systems, and so on. And eventually PBV 302, Panzerbandwagen 302. Not Panzerbandwagen, as everyone seems to call it when they try and read it, Panzerbandwagen. And this may also include Ukraine producing their own ammunition for these vehicles as well, mainly the 40 millimeter ammunition for the Bofors gun in the CV90. So things are moving. Sweden wants to ensure that Ukraine can rely on its own production, shorten the logistical chain and stuff like that. And I just want to highlight this is what I think is very interesting. It says camouflageutrustning till donerade pansarbandvagn 302. That's camouflage equipment for the donated PBV 302s. And this is interesting. What do they mean with camouflage equipment? Well, when we're talking about Sweden, Ukraine, and camouflage, it has to be the Saab Mobile Camouflage System, MCS Barracuda. The CV90s have been given it, the Archers have been given it, and the SRV 122s have all been provided with the Barracuda camouflage. And you can quite clearly see it on the image of the CV90 here. This is a highly advanced camouflage system that reduces the heat signature with 70%, as you can see on the image here that I found on a War Thunder forum. So yeah, take it for what it is. Well, it's from War Thunder forum, so it's probably dead accurate, right? So anyway, And so we will probably see this extremely high-tech camouflage system being put on these old Cold War era vehicles, the PBV-302s, designed, taken into service in 1966. And the Barracuda system, it's pretty neat. All they need to do is figure out the proportions of the vehicle, and then they can custom make these camouflage systems, this system to fit the vehicle. And when I've seen images of it, it appears to be a patchwork that is then assembled relying on some really incredibly strong Velcro. So you just patch it onto the vehicle, attach it with the Velcro, and then it is secure in place and protecting the vehicle. So they just need to figure out how to set up the patchwork for the PBVs, and then let the factory manufacture those, and then attach them to the vehicle with the patchwork relying on these tough Velcro seams. So it's going to be really interesting to see these really old vehicles that were taken out of service 10 years ago being fitted with this ultra high-tech modern camouflage system. Who knew, right? Incredible. Yeah, but these vehicles will do great down in Ukraine. Incredible off-road capabilities. And well, if they get this camouflage system, they will be able to move around at least at night with some relative safety. And now, moving on to what everyone's been talking about. Sweden and Saab has decided to increase spare parts production to allow Ukraine to have enough spare parts for Gripen fighters. Right? And this is what people have been reporting, that what? Sweden will provide Ukraine with spare parts for Gripen? That's kind of weird. Does that mean that they have them? Are they flying Gripen? Or will it yada yada yada? No, it's Sweden is trying just to stay ahead, and they want to have a proper stockpile of spare parts in case Ukraine eventually acquires Gripen fighters. So, Swedish spare parts production, and as you can imagine, it will be focused on providing spare parts for the Swedish Air Force, right? That means Ukraine, if Ukraine at some point begins to fly Gripen, they will have a reduced amount of spare parts available, because most of it will end up with the Swedish Air Force, right? So they will not have enough spare parts to effectively keep the Gripen fighters flying. So Sweden is now ensuring with this aid package that they will have enough spare parts available to supply both Sweden and Ukraine if Ukraine gets to fly Gripen, right? So that is why they have included this increase in spare parts production in the Ukraine aid package. It's to ensure that the Swedish Air Force has all the spare parts they need, but also if and when Ukraine starts flying Gripen, that they also have all the spare parts they need so that Sweden can provide it all without taking away spare parts from Ukraine, right? So you need to cut this and make sure that both air forces has all the spare parts they need. Right, so that's what this is all about. Sweden has included the spare parts production, the increase of the spare parts production in the Ukraine aid package to ensure that Ukraine can fly Gripen eventually without any hiccups, right? And also so that Sweden can have all the spare parts they need for their own fighters. So I mean, Sweden is really pushing for Gripen to end up in Ukraine, and everything is set for it to happen, more or less. So will it happen in a couple of months next year, or will it happen when the war is over? Who knows? But I mean, Sweden is really quite clearly pushing for this to happen as soon as possible, and ensuring that the spare parts are readily available seems to indicate that Sweden is well and truly on the path to providing Gripen fighters to Ukraine. And that's it. That's all I have for you this time. Yes, Carl Gustavs GRG gevär, that sounds Swinglish, is heading down for Ukraine in large quantities. Sweden has already provided a bunch of them, so has other countries, and they are being put to very good use down in Ukraine. CV90 production, spare parts, ammunition being moved to Ukraine eventually. Very important to shorten the time spent on transport from Sweden to Ukraine. If you can build things in Ukraine, you obviously shorten the time spent along the logistical routes. And I just think it's so hilarious if they actually provide the old PBVs with the Barracuda camouflage. That's gonna be awesome. Yeah, Combat Boat 90, 6 of them, so 16 in total from Sweden. Ukraine keeps building that amphibious force. We will see amphibious operations down around Kherson. Make no mistake about it, it's gonna happen. And of course, like I just spent too much time talking about, spare parts production being increased in Sweden to ensure that should Ukraine at some point fly Gripen fighters, there is enough spare parts to go around to supply both the Swedish and the Ukrainian Air Force. So in the end, it does look like that Russia will well and truly remember that Swedish steel cuts deep. I mean, the NLaw has already reminded Russia that that is the case, not to mention the CV90s with the 40mm Bofors. And more things are coming. More Swedish weapons, Swedish steel is ending up in Ukraine, taking the fight to Russia. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine. Give them hell.